coming up in this episode.
You've got to prove your concept first and make sure that there is demand. I mean,
right.
and unless you've got huge funding and you don't really care. I mean,
Right, which doesn't happen. What I advise to a lot of the sort of founders I work with for when we develop go-to-market strategy, excuse me, is be hyper focused, and then you end up being a subject matter expert or an industry expert, and when people then come to your platform, the landing page, it speaks to them directly. It's like, we are a tool for you, for your business.
It is a real challenge. So when you come across an entrepreneur who's sort of getting started for the first time, they've got big ideas about what they want to achieve, and they are the most challenging projects to work on. Absolutely the most challenging projects, because they don't know exactly what it is that they want. So the scope isn't fixed. And even if they do have a good idea of what they want, they can't translate that necessarily into a technical sort of brief.
The Founders Unplugged podcast, hosted by Greg Mccallum. Raw, uncensored conversations with startup founders.
Yeah, it's all right. It's been an interesting start to the year.
Oh, really? Why is that?
Well, I say interesting. I was ill from basically just before Christmas, over Christmas, and then just like staying with me for basically the whole of January. I mean, but I'm fine. It was COVID, and I don't think I'd ever really had COVID before. So yeah, just couldn't
shake it.
Yeah, exactly. It didn't take me down or make me feel really, really rough. It was just sort of a consistent feeling of just a bit rough.
Yeah.
For quite a long time. So yeah, I'm only really getting over that now. So
oh wow.
Yeah, so that's been a bit boring.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I can sympathise. I'm feeling a bit shitty today as well.
Yeah,
I think that's just this time of year living in this country, right? Like everyone I seem to speak to, this time of year generally, it's like, yeah, feeling a bit shit. But
that's it. Yeah, it is. Yeah, everyone.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that, dude. Yeah. That's a rough. Yeah, it's a tough start. I mean, were you managing to get stuff done at least?
Yeah, more or less. I mean, it's been a busy start to the year. So we picked up a couple of clients for sort of more short-term kind of projects towards the end of last year.
Right.
They're due to kind of end of the main build around sort of end of March.
All right.
Okay. So we're quite busy at the moment, but then it does drop off a little bit. But yes, it's been okay. So far. So fingers crossed for the rest of the year. It's going to pick up and be a good one, I hope.
Yeah, let's hope so. I mean, if it certainly feels like it. I don't know. There's a good pace already, at least for myself. I don't know if you feel the same way, but so far so good. So let's see how it goes. But if this year's anything like last year, then it's going to be good. That's the way the way I look at it. But well, look, thanks for joining me. I know you're very busy, like we just talked about, so I really appreciate you taking the time. And it's been a while since we've seen each other, so as you probably noticed, it's already recording, so we just get straight into it.
Yeah, sure, no worries.
But there's only one thing that I ask my guests to really do on this thing, really, before I sort of just pick your brains and bombard you with a ton of questions, and that's to ask you to sort of introduce yourself to the class, as it were. So why don't you tell anyone who's listening or watching now, who you are and what you do, and then maybe I'll try and pick your brains on some stuff, if that's okay.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm Tom Fielder from Switchplane Limited. We're a software engineering firm based here in sunny Eastbourne. And for me, I mean, we've been running the company for 21 years, myself and my brother. We started out as just a couple of software geeks, doing pretty much anything for anybody at any price. Because we weren't business people. We were just a couple of geeks, really. And I'm sure we got taken advantage of a little bit back then. But we were finding our way, working out of our parents' garage, that kind of thing. Classic startup sort of story. And I guess so. That was back in 2003 when we started the company. But it wasn't really until sort of 2008 where we got a bit more serious about what we were doing. We're still, we were kids who were just messing about, really. And then we realized, okay, we do actually need to do something with our lives and get on and maybe move out of home and stuff. So we need to actually earn some money. So we kind of took it a bit more seriously. We went for our first sort of office space. Even though we couldn't really afford it after sort of 3 months, we just thought, well, we just got to do this. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, then fine, we'll have to just move on and do something else.
Right.
But, as it happened, we moved into this little office on the avenue in Eastbourne, little basement office. And we managed to pick up a couple of clients more or less straight away through, it was Google Ads then. And kind of luck just came our way, I guess, and things just went from there. We slowly found our niche in what we were good at, and as the internet and technology changed, we found our niche again. We sort of started out, like I said, just doing basically anything for anyone. But as things changed, things became more technical, more complex. Neither myself or my brother were particularly good with design. We were okay, but we're not designers. And so we found our niche coming away from the sort of brochure type websites through to more sort of custom software, and that's where it began. So for us, we started 2003, but I guess we'd really only started to find our way 2010. Maybe even later.
Wow.
Because obviously stuff changes as well. Even again over the last sort of, I don't know, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, where we've seen websites like Wix, Squarespace, these guys popping up where you can build essentially a website that's pretty good for next to nothing, and you can't compete with that kind of market, and there's no point trying. So. And again, because it's not our core skill, we thought, well, we'll just pivot away from that market and focus more on the sort of more complex e-commerce or whatever, where you can't get the software off the shelf, or it just doesn't quite fit. So yeah, we found ourselves sort of solving problems like digital delivery. So take Steam as an example. Everyone has heard of Steam. Anyone that's a gamer will have heard of Steam and understand what that is, and being able to download their library of products and so on and so forth, with all the digital rights management and all the data storage and everything that must go with it. And so we've built systems like that in the past, where you can't get that kind of thing off the shelf. It just doesn't exist because it's just too complex. There's too many individual little processes involved. And so that's the sort of market that we fulfill. That's the kind of client that we do work for. And more kind of these days we're looking at towards more on AI and data and stuff that goes with that. So in particular looking at manufacturers who historically have found it very difficult to use technology in software, on the software side at least, and integrate their systems. And those guys have complex processes that you can't solve off the shelf. So we're trying to help as many of those that we can, whilst also doing stuff that we enjoy doing. So we did DigiFest last year, hoping to do it again this year. We've got dates in the diary and everything for this year, and
I've applied to be a speaker again. So
yeah, I've heard, and hopefully that's going to happen. And
yeah, I might turn it down a bit this time. I ruffled a few feathers apparently.
Oh, really?
Okay. So yeah, I might turn it down a bit, make it a bit more broad,
Right. Yeah, well, that's the challenge, isn't it? I mean, when I was doing mine on how to get started with AI in business, it's such a wide-ranging topic, and obviously AI is not one thing. There's so many disciplines within AI, and in the room I'm talking to manufacturers, I'm talking to students, I'm talking to just general business owners, so trying to give something of value, because that's what you want, right? As a speaker, you want to be able to give people something that they can at least go away with. So that was the main challenge actually that I had. It wasn't the doing of the presentation or coming up with stuff to talk about. It was more, how can I actually make this relevant to the people that are going to be there,
right?
So that they've got something to take away. Hopefully it worked all right. I mean, it was good fun, and we're going to do it again. And there seemed to be a lot of appetite for it. So
absolutely,
so fingers crossed that's going to be a positive thing again for Eastbourne and the tech industry locally. So yeah.
And for those listening who don't know what we're talking about, this was essentially a business and tech expo that you put together, wasn't it?
That's right.
Locally to us, because we're both in Eastbourne. So, which begs the question: why are we bothering doing this on Google? I suppose, but we're just down the road from each other. But yeah, it was the first one of its kind that you guys put together, and it was very well received, very well attended, very well received, and I think pretty much all but praise, really.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the most negative feedback that we had was that it would have been nice to have a curtain in the main room, so like a main curtain, just breaking the room from the sort of the hallway through to the exhibition room, because there was a bit of noise. So that was like that.
If that's your biggest complaint, you're doing right.
Exactly. It's like, we're so sorry. We'll try and figure out a curtain for next time. Not sure the budget can manage it, but we'll see what we can do.
It's also the most British complaint you're ever going to get, isn't it? About people talking too loudly.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Sorry,
but yes. No, it really was well received, and I hope that it's not just like a feel good factor, that it was just because it was new and it was different. I hope that it is something that that people can genuinely feel a part of. Both and the colleges and the students as well, because that we didn't get quite the attendance that we wanted from the students. So that maybe the colleges let us down a little bit. Although it depends who you speak to. Like, the colleges really want to do this stuff, and then people that are in the know and actually can make this stuff happen, I don't know, they don't seem to talk to each other. So we've got more time this year to try and get those guys talking and actually make something happen. And
I presume now you've got those relationships a bit more solidified, and so I mean, I think it's probably safe to say, like, that the colleges and universities and so on, will be probably very up for it, and still are, but they can't really force the students to attend, right? Like,
exactly.
So, and students are going to be students, so and they're inherently quite a skeptical bunch. So if they're like, oh, Eastbourne's putting on a tech conference, like, it's probably going to be this or whatever, because inherently they're probably quite skeptical of where it is, and so, because it's not like the biggest city in the world, right, or town in the world. So, but now that they've probably seen the results from the first one, and there's some tangible proof, videos and photos, and the sort of testimonials from people who've been there, it's probably going to be easy to make a case like, actually, no, this is a really good thing worth going to, because last year's one was fantastic. So it'll probably be a bit of an easier sell, I imagine, to students this time around.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the hopes, really. So it is about business, but it's also about the community, and it's about the jobs in the tech community locally. And so that obviously we're relying on students coming into the industry locally, because it is hard. It's hard for us to recruit decent tech talent, and other companies like us tell us the same thing. And so we're trying to give people a reason for staying in Eastbourne. So when you grow up here, you go to college here, you can actually stay here and do tech and live by the sea. So yeah, I mean, it was definitely noticeable when we had like a group of students wandering around. They made a beeline straight for the snacks, for the food.
Of course.
Went past all the exhibitors straight for the food. But yeah, I mean, whatever. They're there to take from it what they can get from it, and that's fine with me. But yeah, I mean, we did have one success story. So one of the girls that was helping out, working with us, as a runner, sort of just helping to keep stuff going throughout the day. Heather, she kind of came along sort of last minute. She didn't know any of us or any of the other people that we were, involved with in DigiFest. And she just got chatting to a few of the exhibitors there, and lo and behold, a couple of months later, she's got herself a job at Fountain Digital. So
there you go.
That was a success story for us, and she's really switched on. Lovely girl, and I'm really pleased that that worked out. And there'll be other things that worked out from it, but yeah. So
I can tell you for myself. So I don't know if I told you this, but I and I'm always constantly banging on about this. So sorry, listeners and viewers who have heard this a million times, but I offer pro bono advisory sessions, sort of startup mentoring and commercial advisory sessions to pretty much any founder that wants it out there. There's a slight change this year in that. It's only pro bono if I'm allowed to film it and share it for other people to learn from. Slight change from last year. Last year it was just, there was no conditions. It was free to everyone. So as you can imagine, I spoke to a lot of entrepreneurs and founders last year. It was over 500 in total, actually. It was a bit nuts. And so obviously I was at the event, I was speaking about commercial and sales tactics. So and it was very well. I was really happy with the turnout as well. I showed up and there was someone speaking, and it was a relatively full room. But then, as I sort of swapped over with the speaker, and I sort of looked across, there was a lot of empty chairs. I was getting quite nervous. I was fucking hell, no one really cares about what I've got to talk about. Everyone wants to talk about tech. No one wants to know about sales, surely, And then, of course, 5 minutes before, the whole thing packed out, standing room only. And I was like, oh, of course, no one else is talking about sales. Everyone's talking about tech. So they probably really want to know. So it was completely packed, which was fantastic. And like I said, I went on some tirades about some stuff that I think are injustices in the industry, which is what I mean by I think I might tone it down a bit next time.
Right. Okay.
But then afterwards, loads of people coming up to me and chatting with me, which is really lovely. Thanking me for it and so on. And I brought up the topic when I was talking about the fact that I'd spent throughout the year spoken to over 500 entrepreneurs and founders because of the pro bono sessions. So a load of people put one in with me as a result, and met some really interesting people. And as you can probably tell from doing this, I just love chatting to people and sort of demystifying things and sort of making information a bit more free and so on. So it was I enjoyed every moment of it. So it was a great experience, and then I had some really great follow-up questions as a result. So
yeah, that's so good to hear. Yeah, I mean, and that was one of the reasons for doing it. So just to boost stuff locally, and
exactly.
So that's great. Yeah, I'm really pleased to hear it. Yeah,
and it was great just to be a bit more. And this is something that I know I need to work on actually. And I really thought about this last year, and actually attending your event made me realize it more. Which is, I'm very involved in the startup ecosystem on a pretty global scale, but I'm neglecting what's on my doorstep, and it was really nice to actually just meet the local entrepreneurs and founders of businesses that are literally down the road from me. You kind of, I get a bit isolated in that regard, in a really opposite way, where I'm speaking to clients, in different continents and so on. It's actually, there's loads of people just down the road that want some pretty straightforward advice. It's maybe I should start a bit more locally first, before,
branch out.
Yeah. Before helping the guys in Australia or Singapore or whatever. It's well, actually, there's some business here that we could do with a hand. So yeah, it's opened my eyes to that, and actually, as a result, I really want to start doing a lot more locally. So you've opened my eyes to that.
Excellent, brilliant. Yeah, well, anything we can do to keep business in Eastbourne and improving stuff at Eastbourne, or even the area locally. It's not just about Eastbourne, and we we considered having DigiFest. Traveling a lot, being an event that goes along the coast, or it's all sort of just up in the air. Really, it's a bit, it's kind of agile, and we'll make decisions as and when they need to be made. It's keep stuff simple.
Absolutely. Are you planning on doing it in the same venue?
Yes, yes. The plan is the same venue. We had about sort of 30 exhibitors last time, maybe 400 attendees. So it'd be nice to exceed that. I think we just got to test it again and make sure that there is a genuine want for it. The building was good. Lots of different areas that you can sort of break out into. I guess the challenge is organising the different speakers at what time they're speaking. So we're trying to avoid sort of clashes of related topics,
like similar topics. Yeah.
But it's kind of one of those where, well, you're trying to cater for all the attendees and the exhibitors that want to come along and listen as well. So to try to just limit yourself to having a single roster of speakers, just one after the other, I don't think it really works. You want to kind of just let people dip in and out of the different speakers. So, there's going to be an element of crossover probably. But, hopefully it works out well enough that people can take away what they want. And we're hopefully going to be filming it again. And so that people can share stuff online, see it later. So
that's it. If people miss it, they can always catch up on it.
That's it.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
No, that's awesome. I'm very much looking forward to it. I really am. I jumped straight on it as soon as I got the email because I'm very keen. And I've said it before to those that I'm in contact with for organising the event, but I'll say it to you directly too. Anything I can do to help, please do let me know. I'll be more than happy to help. So I'm looking forward to it very much. Really quick question. You mentioned about when you were sort of doing your intro and telling us about your humble beginnings, as it were, about those first few clients soon after you got the first office with your brother. So what were those projects you were working on? What were those early ones? Were they all sort of web design type stuff, or did you remember them?
Yeah, I mean, I do remember. One of them is a project that we still work on.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So the first project was, or the one I'll talk about is a company called British Airport Transfers. Right. So these guys were essentially Uber before Uber existed. Had these guys had the same level of investment as Uber, then they would have become Uber. Right. I mean, so they were really early on sort of getting online taxi bookings. What's really is private hire, really, and airport transfers. So these guys were there really early days to that industry. There, we're trying to get people to use their phone to book their airport transfers, get that all done quickly and conveniently without having to give your local taxi firm a call and get quotes and all the rest of it. So it was all the quoting engine and figuring out what the pricing would be, all the different types of vehicle, and making all that simple for the end user, and building into the system sort of vehicle tracking, driver tracking, status updates, that they've arrived at their destination but the passenger's nowhere to be seen, and all of this kind of stuff to help them essentially build all of those processes into this system. So a lot of it's customer facing with the sort of quoting engine. Where are you going to? What kind of vehicle do you want? Do you want a return journey? All of those kind of things that you kind of just take for granted. But then it's all the kind of back end systems that help them to really scale what they were doing. So it just, I mean, prior to COVID, because once COVID hit, their business took such a hit because obviously nobody was traveling. Up until that point, it had been an incredibly successful business. And like I say, we had been working with them since 2008. Right. Things have slowed down a little bit because of COVID, but we still do work with them. But yes, when COVID hit, nobody was traveling, so their business just essentially stopped overnight because they're an airport transfers company that nobody's going to the airport. So all the people that worked for them, all their drivers, decided to just get other jobs, or a lot of them came from Sri Lanka, which is where the business owner was originally from. Right. So they went home to Sri Lanka or wherever it was, and never to return post COVID. So post COVID, it's been a struggle, I think, for them. But had they not been in the industry early, sort of 2005 onwards, had they not been there and had they not made that jump to using the web, then they absolutely would not have survived, because they built up such a huge following, such a huge customer base.
They had some staying power behind it.
Exactly. So they were able to essentially stop functioning, continue to trade as it were, you know, by having the absolute skeleton crew on furlough, and then slowly but surely sort of ramp back up again. But had they not had their existing customer base, I just don't see how that would have happened. And obviously, you know, you know, people are much more open to doing remote work and you know, meetings online these days. The whole sort of pre-COVID era where everything's in person, you've got your traditional sort of business person persona jetting off to go and have their meeting in America. It just, those things don't happen quite so much. I
Not
feel
as much. Yeah.
I feel it is coming back to a certain degree, because I think there is a lot to be said for being in person. But yeah, for sure, that really impacted on their business. It was such a shame because they're, you know, a great bunch of people. But yeah, I mean, that was essentially the first project that we worked on.
Wow.
And it was a really interesting one, because we were constantly pushing the boundaries of technology that was available then. You know, you open your phone and you take it for granted now that you could book a taxi in real time. You just take it for granted. But you know, you think, what, 15 years ago, that wasn't a thing. You couldn't do that. You could phone your local taxi firm. You might be able to get a quote from somebody, but it wasn't sort of real time and all this kind of stuff. Certainly not the real time vehicle tracking. That there was vehicle tracking, but not through like an integrated panel so that their admin team could see where all their drivers were at any given time. So yeah, it was really interesting project and really good one to be a part of, and help to see them grow and see, you know, the change that we could help bring about for them. You know, Switchplane, one of our things is that we like meaningful change. We were trying to figure out what our messaging was, and we eventually came to this sort of meaningful change thing. We realized, well, we like solving problems, and we like working with small business more in a way than we do working with big business, because with big business you are kind of you're just a cog in a machine,
right?
Whereas with small business, when you're delivering a piece of work for those guys, it can be, you know, fundamental, it can be groundbreaking, it can be hugely transformational to their business. And so the sort of the emotional side of it, the feedback that you get from the client when you deliver something for them, and there's a genuine sort of look on their face of, oh my God, this is going to save me so much time. And it's that's the sort of thing. If we could bottle that, then yeah, we would be, that's our drink there.
Right. Yeah, meaningful, like a proper tangible impact.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I mean, we do work for bigger companies, but I guess it's just, and the companies we work for, they're great as well. I'm not saying that they're not. It's just
no. I get what you mean. It's just in the grander scheme of things, I suppose. Like you said, you are probably one of many different outsourced teams working on various different projects, and it's maybe a little bit more difficult to see what impact you have on moving the needle, if any, right?
That's it, yeah.
So no, I get that. Yeah. It's still a contribution and a meaningful one, but it's just not, the feedback loop, I suppose, isn't as clear.
That's it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, that was our very first project, and kind of lucky to pick it up, and yeah, lucky for it to keep going through COVID, and hopefully, fingers crossed for him, he's going to pick up and things are going to go from strength to strength again, because it's a good business. It is something that people need, and like I say, they've got years and years and years of customer base behind them. So yeah,
which definitely counts for something. So so did that have quite a significant impact, that client, on sort of your trajectory moving forward in terms of the kinds of projects that you would more likely both want to gravitate to, or was it always the case that you knew you wanted to work on this kind of digitization, I guess, of these kinds of business, you know, these more traditional businesses? Was this more of a thing that you'd already set out, or more of a chance?
Well, I guess it certainly showed us that but where again, at that time we didn't really know exactly what our niche was.
Right.
So certainly back then, it was helping to steer us in the direction that we find ourselves in today. So it was all about the sort of the more complexity involved in the project, the lack of stuff off the shelf, and having these systems sort of talk to each other. Excuse me.
All right, that's good.
So it helped steer us to where we are today, for sure, and opened our eyes to the kind of client that we needed to be looking at, and understanding, well, what other businesses are there in this kind of, not necessarily in this industry, but because we do try to avoid sort of a crossover between competitors.
Right.
We don't have a hard and fast rule exactly, but we have a sort of unwritten rule where we wouldn't take on another airport transfers company. It just, we've worked with these guys for such a long time.
Sure, you wouldn't want to jeopardize that relationship.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But with software, there's a lot of stuff that's translatable. So, it's individual components can be moved across to other projects, and you understand where they can fit in. And at the end of the day, a person is a person, whether they're traveling in a vehicle or they're operating a tanker, for example. A person's still a person, and there are elements that you can of software that you can reuse across projects, and so at that point we thought, okay, well, this is something we're pretty good at and we really enjoy. We love the whole problem solving thing. We're a couple of geeks and we absolutely love it. So anything that we can do that's complex and helps people to solve problems, their business problems, then that's a win for us and it's a win for them. That's where the niche sort of was found, and went on from there. We did do the brochure site thing for a while, but it was never really something that we were the best at. So we kind of moved across to the complex stuff.
And what have you found to be, from that point onwards, but also from that point onwards, some of the more common misconceptions that clients have when coming to you and wanting work done? Are there generally sort of reoccurring things and misunderstandings and misconceptions about what it is you do and deliver, or can and cannot deliver?
There can be, yeah. It's partly a challenge for our messaging to get that right. So that people understand, what it is that we do, and how we do it and how we work. It's a bit of a catch-22 because people don't know, or at least, again, going back sort of 10 years, people didn't realize that this stuff could happen. They don't know what they don't know. And so to try and explain to them, well, actually, there is another way. It's to try and make them realize, well, actually, this thing that you've been doing this way for ages, that you've kind of just forgotten about, that it takes you such a long time, there is actually another way. There are sort of telltale signs in a business where we can say, well, how many spreadsheets have you got? What are you doing in your business? And what processes do you have? What takes a long time? Or what is the sort of key metrics that you would like to improve? And so therefore, what is it that's slowing you down? So often there are sort of these sort of asynchronous processes where, such and such person will download all of their data from their Microsoft Dynamics system in the morning, and they'll put it into a spreadsheet. They'll spend an hour rejigging all the data and making it look nice, and then preparing it and putting it out for everyone else to see. And then someone else will come along and change the spreadsheet. And then at the end of the day, or maybe a couple of days later, the person will re-import it all back to Dynamics. And so, when you think about just something like that, you're spending, or that person is spending, at least 2 hours a day just translating data from their main system for people to actually use. And it sounds boring, but it's that it's really, really quite simple in a way to take that time and repurpose it. So that person spending 2 hours on that role, there's absolutely no reason that they should be doing that. It could be a 5-minute button press. You press a button, an integration that we build pulls the data down and presents it in the format that they want. That's at the very least. An improvement on that would be that, well, you just have a view available for the team in the warehouse or whatever, just sits on top of Dynamics. A way of them integrating with it through an app or whatever. So it's getting across the point that you don't have to do things the way that you've always done them just because you've always done them that way. And trying to make them understand that your time's valuable, right? You want, every industry right now is trying to do more with less. And so if we can help people save 5%, 10%, 15% of their time, we're not saying that person just becomes made redundant, but what we're saying is you could take that time, take 2 hours a day, so 10 hours a week, and repurpose it. That's more than a full day's worth of work, and go and spend that time, I don't know, on marketing or meeting people or trying to do sales or whatever it is. It's just repurposing that time. It's dead time. And so it's that kind of thing where we can come along, have a chat, find the pain points in the business, offer some kind of solution integration, even something quite small. And yes, okay, it might take us 6 weeks to build something, and it might cost $3,000, it might cost $6,000. But the point is that person's time is saved from here on out for the rest of time. And so so what's
and the knock-on effects of that are probably immeasurable, right?
Exactly. So the business then says, oh, okay, so what's our return on investment? Oh, okay, maybe it's going to take us 3 months to return on that based on the time saved. And it's at that point where you sort of see this light bulb moment. It's oh man, I wish we had the internet sooner. Everyone has the same thing when you got the internet for the first time. It's, man, this is amazing. And it's the same light bulb moment when you're speaking to someone and they say, right, okay, so what else can we do? And that's the question that we're always hoping that people will ask, because it's ultimately that's what drives our business forward. Our business wouldn't exist if we were not able to return on investment for people.
Right.
We just wouldn't be here if it didn't work. So therefore, the fact that we've been here for 20 years means it must work.
Right.
So it's getting people to take that leap of faith, because it is a leap of faith. It's a promise from us that I promise we'll do something for you. We don't know exactly what it is. You don't know what it is yet, but I promise you it's going to be amazing. I
do always find it to be the most sort of contradictory idea that most people seem to know and accept on some inner level, that change is a very inevitable part of the human experience, and especially in business, like you said, even in your business, being willing to change and pivot and all that is an incredibly important part of just being in business. And it is kind of funny that, like you've pointed out there, and I've experienced time and time again, that whenever you come to someone with a potential solution to say this is going to help you do your job better and make you more money and so on, the instinct is to be very, very skeptical and to assume that it's going to cost them more time, and that it's probably going to be a more painful experience and all of that. And it's just so interesting that it takes as much convincing as it does in order to get people to change some of their habits, especially ones that are usually pretty bad, like very clunky or time consuming and not done in the most efficient way. And as someone who literally goes into businesses and advises them on better ways of doing things, I can tell you people are not receptive to it from the off. Like, even when they literally pay you to tell them, they're still very skeptical until you go, just, okay, let's do it, and then let's see what happens.
It's better the devil you know, isn't it? So they know what they're dealing with. They know how it works. Yes, it takes them ages, but at least I know how it works, and they just want to leave it alone.
Right.
I mean that and that's, I guess it's partly because certainly for bigger business, sort of medium size to bigger business, those guys, often the people in the business, have been stung by promises from like Microsoft Navision, like, oh, this Navision, this thing's going to be amazing for you. It's going to integrate here. We've got these 3 different systems. They're all talk to each other in real time. It's going to be fantastic. Right. And then on delivery, None of that actually is true. It's this thing where people are skeptical because of the sales guy. I'm not a sales guy. I'm a tech guy. I like solving tech problems and I like helping people. That's the difference with Switchplane. We like solving problems and we like to help people. Like I said, meaningful change is our thing. We're not there to try and sell snake oil or try and sell this thing that's not really going to do anything for you, because our business, like I said, our business wouldn't exist.
I mean, I suppose it also comes down to scale too, right? When you're looking at very large projects that are looking to solve a multitude of complex problems, I mean, the chances of those sort of projects actually not sticking the landing increase considerably, right?
Yeah.
Because all it takes is for a couple of people to not fully engage in that project or do their part, and the whole thing does fall apart.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's true. I mean, the amount of founders I speak to or entrepreneurs I speak to that tell me about failed projects with developers and development companies is unreal. Like almost every single person that I work with has at some point gone through at least one development studio before they found the set of developers or developer or studio, whatever, that they're happy working with. And I can't help but wonder if that is just, I think that's just inevitable. If you've never worked with a development studio or a developer before, you don't know how that process works. You're probably the one to make it fail to some degree. Yeah. Like it's probably doomed to fail because of your basic lack of understanding or misaligned expectations of actually what's involved and you can get out of that.
Yeah.
Like
sure.
have you seen that? Have you seen?
I have.
Since the beginning of your journey, I assume that, like you said, there was kind of like maybe this slight awe of like, not actually misunderstanding the amazing things that are possible. Is it kind of switched the other way around now where people are expecting almost too much?
Well, yeah, I mean, that is certainly a thing. I mean, you take some of the functionality that you just see from Google, like, right. Google Meet, for example, we're chatting on right now, and people just take it for granted. Oh, well, Google can just do that, so why can't you guys?
Right.
Well, surely it's only going to take a couple of hours to knock up Google Meet, isn't it? You've got absolutely zero sense. And like, you can't blame them because Google often make these things look easy.
Well, we've been spoiled now with
exactly.
with all of the tools that we have access to. So because we see them in abundance on our phones, in our pockets, literally all day, every day. Yeah. I think there is some sense of like, well, it must be fairly easy because they did it.
Yeah, exactly.
And I get that all the time in the work that I do. And it's like, you don't understand. It took them years to get to that point,
Yeah, years and years and years of huge teams that they go through like there's no tomorrow.
Yeah.
But yes, I mean, it is a real challenge. So when you come across an entrepreneur who's sort of getting started for the first time, they've got big ideas about what they want to achieve. And they are the most challenging projects to work on, absolutely the most challenging projects, because they don't know exactly what it is that they want. So the scope isn't fixed. And even if they do have a good idea of what they want, they can't translate that necessarily into a technical sort of brief, as it were. We do our best to try and help, but and then thirdly, that they try and bite off too much. So instead of really trimming everything back, they kind of look at their project and think, well, everything in this project is a deliverable. I need absolutely
it's all a must-have.
Yeah, it all's a must-have. Whereas when we're working with people, we're always trying to get them to focus on the sort of the MVP, so the minimum viable product. So what is the smallest thing that we could do to solve the biggest problem that you have right now? So what's the problem causing you the biggest pain right now? And what could we do, the smallest thing, to get started? And so that is challenging when you're working on a new project, because there are often things that are must-haves. If you're building an e-commerce platform that's custom, yes, you need to have a shopping cart. You need to be able to take payments from people. You need to be able to cancel orders and refund, and all of those kind of things that you take for granted. Those things have to exist. Fair enough. So it is a real challenge, and those are the projects which, if they're not careful, then they really can fail. And it really is a challenge for us to try and rein those people in, to help them to be successful. Because again, ultimately, at the end of the day, we want the clients that we work with to be successful. Again, we wouldn't have a business if we couldn't help that happen. So we do offer our sort of strategic expertise, as it were, to try to help people to bring an MVP about, rather than getting too excited about. And you know what it's like. You're stuck in your own project. You haven't talked to anyone about it for a while. And
people get married to it.
Yeah,
right? And
you go off on a tangent, and some stuff absolutely does not need to be in the MVP.
Yeah, I've been guilty of that with my own businesses for sure, and learn the hard way. Like one of the things that one of my default settings, I guess you could say, for some of my advice that I give to some founders, not all but some, is that actually you shouldn't be even looking at an MVP. You should be looking at an MVS, minimal viable service,
right,
before you even look at software.
Yeah,
a great example. I won't give a specific example because that would be sort of confidentiality or whatever, and maybe spoil someone's idea. But like I'll take what you were saying about your first project, for example. Like if someone came to me and said, with zero funding and a little bit of money in the bank, and maybe had a family, and like there's a lot of circumstances maybe around why I'd make this advice, and maybe in a business that isn't being funded particularly this much. Stuff like that. But let's say it was the one that you got, and they come up to me and said, and they hadn't already built the business, that there's they just said, I've got this idea for an app. It's going to let people be able to book a trip to an airport and all that sort of stuff, and make payments and get quotes. But they're working in I don't know, in Tesco's at the time, full time, right? That they haven't built anything in relation to this. They've just got an idea for an app, and I've got a slide deck, and I'm going to go out and get funding, and then I'm going to build the MVP and all that sort of stuff. And they're like, no. No, sorry. Go out and build the business first, right?
Yeah.
Start by building the business. Get a couple of people that or better yet, get a car. Start doing the driving yourself. Promote to people locally to you. Do it old school, because actually the tool set available to you now to build a business like that is better than it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Yeah. So actually, your chances of utilizing the current sort of modern day tool set to build a actual brick and mortar business these days is way better than it ever was. So go and do that first, and then build a client base. And like you said, your client did that, and that's why he's got that staying power. It's like that's what you need to do first. It's not you build it and they will come. It's like get them to come and then build it.
That's it. Yeah, you've got to hit the need. Right. Hit the need for the app. Yeah, I mean, and taking that example of the British Airport transfers, that is what they did. I mean, they were working
right. I assume
prior to the software. Their business existed. Yeah,
right.
They were working on paper job sheets that they were faxing out to their drivers, and obviously,
If you are enjoying this episode and want to support the show, please like and subscribe with notifications turned on.
One cancellation and that's it. Your day is ruined. You've got to phone everyone and change it all. So yeah, I mean, for them, they had this business in place already. So yeah, absolutely. Trying to build a thing and expect people to come is a hugely risky strategy. You've got to prove your concept first and make sure that there is demand. I mean, right. And unless you've got huge funding and you don't really care. I mean,
right, which doesn't happen. Not at least not anymore. I mean, I think there was a golden age, pre-COVID of people coming up with ideas and being able to go to investors and just getting funded. No experience behind some of these founders, things like that. But now that just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So not a chance. But which I don't think is a bad thing, because otherwise you're kind of building your house on sand.
Well, absolutely, yeah, and taking away funding from good opportunities as well.
Right. Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah, it's an interesting. I've had that more times than I can count. And I think, and I'm seeing them do the work. The ones that actually, listen to that, and what's interesting is I speak to them sort of months down the road, and they'll often say, "Do you know what? My idea for the platform was completely changed as a result of that."
Yeah.
Exactly. Actually, I didn't really realize what the problems were until I started doing it.
Yeah, that's it. For real. Yeah, you've got to live it and breathe it and understand ultimately the job, right? You've got to understand it. Otherwise, you're not going to know the ins and outs and know how to solve it with software.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So you mentioned that obviously now it's a time where you're looking at a few other avenues to go down and sort of the different strings to add to your bow, as it were, as a company. And you mentioned things like AI and big data and stuff like that. So what's the sort of, what are the sort of projects you're interested in or working on, if you can talk about them?
So for AI, we're doing what we can this sort of early this year to put something together which is called getting AI ready. So we're trying to package up consultancy really for businesses, because AI is a bit different for business, I think, compared to other innovations that have happened in the past, because AI is this thing that people really struggle to actually get their head around. It's just a big magic box and they have no clue how it works whatsoever. So as a business owner, when usually if something comes along, you've got a good general feeling about how something works. You can think, well, I could probably research that and figure out how to apply it to my business. With AI, I think it's a bit different, because it is a big magic box and people don't understand it. But they don't know how to go about taking advantage of it. You've got the final sort of polished products like ChatGPT, which people are loving and taking advantage of, which is fantastic. But it's about, how do they take that next step? How do they think? They're thinking, ChatGPT, this is amazing. They need to ask the question, so that's amazing. How can I apply it to my business? Rather than just asking ChatGPT, what could I do with AI? If AI is that incredible, what can I do with AI within my business? And that's the real challenge, because they don't know how it works, they don't know what they need, they don't know what they should be doing. And so that's where we're trying to come at it from, and to help people to understand a little bit about what AI is. We're not going to go all technical and talk about all the different things.
Sure.
Just too much. But what we'll talk about is a little bit, at least, to give people an idea, so they can at least get a feeling and understand it a little bit. And therefore give them an idea of, well, this is what you should be doing. You should be getting your data in order. AI is only going to be as good as the data that sits behind it. If you've got bad data, you're going to get bad predictions from AI, whatever. So yeah, we're putting together this thing called Getting AI Ready, where we're going to go and see businesses, have a little discovery session, talk about their business in a similar way that we would with the custom software stuff. Ultimately, the two kind of do go hand in hand. If custom software to build the AI or integrate with AI or bring your data together, whatever. It's the pipeline. Custom software is like the pipeline to bring it all together. So yeah, we're going to see these businesses, chat to them about the problems they're trying to solve. Where's your data at? What's the main problem you'd like to solve? Can we figure out a way of making AI effective for you? It doesn't necessarily have to solve the entire problem. If it can give you information that's really useful for you to then solve the problem yourself. So it's a custom solution at the end of the day. It's consultancy to help businesses to get the best from AI, because if people aren't going to take advantage of AI because they're too scared of it, then they're nervous, they don't understand it, they just want to ignore the change, then those are the businesses that are going to really start to struggle. The ones that take advantage of it are going to fly. The productivity is going to go through the roof. And heaven knows we need more productivity in business to do more with less, or with this. So yeah, that's one of our key things that we're trying to help people with this year. We've got a manufacturing event in March, actually, where I'm going to do a little presentation about AI for manufacturers locally, to try and again explain a little bit about AI, introduce us, and offer a bit of a free consult, just to say, well, these are the things that you could be doing. So AI is a big thing, and it's not going away. So
it's interesting, because I'm seeing, as I'm sure you are too, well, we all are, AI being thrown in almost every software solution that is out there, but more for the customer facing side of things. It seems as like, just basically adding an AI assistant to everything. Right? I've even noticed on Just Eat now, I ordered something the other day for the family, and there's a little chat bot, and I was like, what? Okay, well, let me see what this is all about. So I typed in, find something relatively well priced and healthy in my area, and it brought up burgers and pizza and stuff. Okay, well, fuck off, this isn't. They've just thrown this in, right? And it seems to be like it's a bit of a cash grab, sort of jumping on the bandwagon type situation. But from what I'm getting from what you're saying is you're talking about this on a really fundamental infrastructure type level? How can AI be used on the back end of your business in order to increase productivity? Maybe give you insights into your customers or their behaviors, or your admin or whatever, your infrastructure to streamline your business, which ultimately is what you were already doing to a degree, right? With the businesses you're working with, in terms of boosting productivity by creating these structures bolstered by software. So it feels like a very natural progression to that, and one that, to be honest, I think needs to be talked about more in terms of the application of AI, because it seems to be like there's too much of a heavy focus on this customer side of things. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Everybody's seen ChatGPT by now, and everyone's seen chatbots and hated chatbots 5 years ago.
Right.
But now that chatbots are slightly more AI based, and well, depending on which food service you choose to use,
they feel just as useless. I'll be completely honest. They feel just as... I actually preferred some of the earlier chatbots that seemed like they had more, with the guided options.
Yeah, so they're more algorithmic. Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
I actually preferred those. To a degree, and you can still make those now. Like Facebook have open, things like they're actually better in some ways because they give you some options. There's almost too much freedom for error with this interpretation.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. I mean, yes, the AI, like I said, is only going to be as good as the data that sits behind it. So if you've got a chatbot that's got crap data behind it or no data, then it's just going to be useless.
Or you ask a stupid question. Right. Which evidently I did. Healthy and well priced.
On Just Eat,
stupid me. Right?
Sorry, zero results. No, I mean, so it's a challenge to get people to realize that there is more to it. It's not just about chatbots.
Right.
It is multidisciplinary. So we're looking at, for manufacturers, for example, where they've got a production line, there's people that do quality control. Obviously, they want to minimize defects because it causes huge problems down the line. So, you've got cameras just on the production line taking pictures of stuff, and AI analyzing it and figuring out, does this thing look broken or does it look like it should look? It's just difference management or difference measurement. To understand how different is this from what it should look like. And even if it's not the AI that's making the decision about whether it's broken or not, it's at least able to say with some level of certainty, hey, human, I reckon this is 70% chance broken. And then the human gets involved. So it's stuff like that. So you've got computer vision. So that's an example of computer vision where it's scanning stuff. But you've got the reporting and the back-end analysis. Historically, for reporting, you'd have to build specific reports for the specific problem that someone wanted to solve. I want to see what's my most popular product over the last X number of months. And you kind of have to build that kind of report in a way manually or algorithmically. And this is the big difference with AI. You're not really specifying an algorithm, like a bunch of logic saying if this then that and so on and so forth. You're using its intuitive knowledge to say, well, this is what a product is, this is what the product sales are, and so when you query it and you say, well, what's my most popular product, it's able to understand what you mean and therefore pick out the data and the reporting for you. So you consider the huge reduction in the programming required to build dashboards. You can save these reports. It really is kind of a thing where you're limited only by your data and, like you say, the kind of question that you can ask it in the right kind of way to get the output that you want. So there's such a huge wealth of sort of applications of AI. It's not just limited to chatbots with historical data analysis, predictive stuff. So for manufacturers where their supply chain, for example, is quite fragile, you take the war in Ukraine, there's issues all over the globe right now with bringing raw materials to the UK or wherever they need to go. And having an AI assistant to pick up on some of these things and suggest and say, well, actually, hey, hold on, these guys are in a sort of an area where there's potentially some conflict or whatever. It could drive up costs, or it can suggest to you and sit there running in the background and make you so much more effective and prevent possibly business critical issues. So the question I ask when people rant and rave about ChatGPT is, the question I ask is, well, if you like that so much, why aren't you applying it to your business? Why don't you think about how it could apply in your business and make your business just as a whole for all of your employees just, take that next step? Because ultimately that's what business is going to turn into.
Yeah, I think about this a lot, and I think I like to consider what the future of certain things look like, and I do find it interesting. I think it's fair to probably assume that in the not too distant future, we're all going to have some level of personal AI assistant that lives with us, pretty much 24/7, right? That's going to be, to some degree, we're going to be reliant on them in the same way that we are on our phones, and probably they'll be integrated in our mobile devices to some extent. But I do wonder, that if that's going to happen on a personal level, that's presumably going to happen at work too, and we're probably going to be assigned by default, of every job, a AI assistant. That's probably just going to be one of the perks at whatever job, right? And I think that's again a fairly obvious thing to summarize. It will happen in the not too distant future. But where I sort of start, I like to explore mentally with and intellectually with is this idea of, well, how do those two work together? In a similar way to sort of, or is there a necessity? I would assume there'd have to be a necessity for that. Like if I'm going into work and I have an AI assistant that's been assigned to me in order to help me do my role and my job and how I execute it, but I also have a personal assistant. Would we want those two to communicate? Would we want is it important for those two to communicate in order for both to be able to do their job properly? And where are the boundaries there? That's I know it's a bit of a left field question to what we're talking about in some ways, but like it just made me sort of think back to me thinking about this the other day. And I don't know, what do you think? Do you think that there's room for that to happen, or is it, would people not want that sort of level of intrusion potentially?
It's a very good question. I mean, it depends on the appetite, doesn't it, of people. But if you roll back the years and think, okay, when you go to work in the 60s, 70s, you wouldn't. It's not a given that you're going to be sat at a desktop and working at a computer. You'd be working at a desk. You go to any job these days, that's in an office, and what are the chances that you show up to your first day at work and you don't have a computer? I mean, you'd be asking the question, well, where's my computer? I don't see any difference between that question and the same question about AI in sort of 5-10 years.
Yeah.
Because the students now that are coming through, these guys, they're all used to tech way more than we were when we were growing up.
Yeah.
And think about how adapted to tech that we are. So those guys that have grown up with it, they lived it and breathed it literally from day one. They've got no idea what that little save icon in Microsoft Word is, that little floppy disk. They've got no idea, but they know it's the save icon. These guys live it and breathe it. So for them, in 5 years, 10 years, when they're entering the labour market, absolutely they're going to be asking the question, well, where's my AI? I need my AI so that I can ask it my dumb questions that I don't want to ask. It's the same as having a calculator.
Right.
We have a calculator. I want to have an AI. And more as people start to use ChatGPT, of course, it's going to be the way that things go. I mean, as for the ethics and crossover and stuff, I mean, I don't know. Who knows where things are really going to go?
I mean, from a data standpoint, it seems to me like it would make sense to have them communicate.
Yeah.
In the same way that these days you don't really get given work phones anymore, right? It's not really a thing. But I remember when mobile phones started being more of a thing, then you would generally be given one. But then people just realized there's no point. Everyone's got 3 minutes now, unlimited data. So it's just like, you okay using your personal phone? Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah. Right. Same sort of thing. I wonder if there's going to be that point of just like, well, you've got your your work AI, and we need to have that because then, your successors had it, so that it has the data of all of their behavior. But then just, connect it with your one so they can talk, so they can find out what your favorite, how you like your coffee, things like that, and vice versa. Then it can also, your personal AI can tap into the work one if you want to work late one day or something like that. There's
I can imagine there are lots of people that would absolutely just be extremely fearful of their privacy being invaded. But I always try and take a step back and look at these things from a sort of a evangelist point of view almost, and just say, well, yes, if we can just say, let's just say for argument's sake that the privacy issue is dealt with. I'm just trying to focus on the issue of how we can solve problems faster and make people's lives generally better. Yes, there is a question over privacy and that kind of stuff. I'm not ignoring it. Well, I'm trying to, but I'm just saying that, yes, there is going to be a certain amount of crossover. And I think that as time goes on, that people will just become more lethargic to it. Maybe they'll just get to the point where, it knows everything.
They just get more comfortable with it.
Yeah, exactly. They'll get more comfortable with it. And
you see, I've always been slightly confused by the people who push back so much on personal data being shared. In fact, there was a podcast episode not too long ago that I talked about how, I think one of the biggest mistakes that the large tech companies of the world have made is just not being as upfront about the fact that they gather this data. But honestly speaking, I think people would have still just done it the same. But I don't really have too much of an issue with, if even when you sort of reinstall Windows or install Windows for the first time, it asks, do you want this sort of experience? Do you mind if we gather this data? And I'm like, yes, please, because it's going to make my entire experience of using the thing better. Because it's going to know about me. It's going to give me ads that are relevant to me. It's going to you know what I mean? Why wouldn't I want to give it my data, for fuck's sake? It's my device. So I'm really on the opposite. I think as far in the extreme of that as possible. I want to give it more of my personal data. I want you to know how tall I am, my shoe size, and all that. So when you recommend, trousers or whatever for me, and shoes, you give me the relevant stuff, why not? But then I know not everyone feels that way, and you've got to respect that. But I don't know, that's just me.
No, I think it's a perfectly valid point of view. But
I am also a bit of a tech head, so that's
exactly. And the question I've always asked myself is, well, do I really care if someone knows that I'm 40 odd and my hair's getting thin? Do I really care? What's somebody going to do with that data? I guess the thing that scares people more is being able to take your likeness, say, or your child's likeness.
Now, you see, that's an interesting thing, because I think people are going to be giving that out voluntarily very soon too, right? Yeah,
well, I mean, if you look at social media, people sharing pictures of their kids on their Facebook page, and it's only really their friendship group that are in control of where those pictures go, right? So easily somebody could take pictures of that I've put on Facebook years and years ago of my kids before I even thought about this stuff. They could take those pictures and put a deep fake on somewhere about showing them talking about something or predict how they're going to look in the future, all this kind of stuff. And I think it's that kind of not scaremongering exactly, but it's that kind of thing that freaks people out. And the question I always come back to is, why would someone bother doing that? Why is my life that interesting? I'm a member of the Dull Men's Club group on Facebook for a reason, right?
Right.
I enjoy the stupid things that I enjoy, but I don't think anyone's really that interested in some of the things that I do. If they are, then great.
I suppose the pushback on that would be, the government could do something with it, or a criminal could do something with it, steal your identity, or something. But then I think that's a fairly easy thing to rebut, which is just, there are many security measures in place to prevent that from happening, which are also tech solutions themselves. So really, the answer to the question is, tech's going to continue to move forward, and the solutions are to ensure that the companies and the organizations and individuals in the security side of tech are also funded and well informed enough to keep up with that. And they're probably going to be the businesses that do the best in the next few years, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the risk of not doing it is you're punishing 100% of people because of this risk, right? It's the same principle as if you were to introduce some kind of legislation about walking your dog and say that, right, you can never take your dog off the lead, or every single dog has got to have a muzzle. Whereas you know that 90, 95, 99% of dog walkers probably are very courteous with their dogs, and they know what their dogs are like, and so on and so forth. But it's the 1%, those people, the 1% that then would essentially ruin it for everyone else. So, and the irony is that if you were to try and introduce legislation to prevent that 1% from behaving that way, the 99% are going to adhere to it because they would have adhered to it anyway, because they're the good guys. The 1% that you're trying to target, they're not going to adhere to it anyway. So bad people are always going to be bad, right? So to try and legislate and prevent the rest of society from moving forward is nonsensical for me.
And someone's going to do it anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Someone's going to do it anyway. Yeah.
Well, it's the whole Oppenheimer thing to a degree, right? Which is why I think, when ChatGPT first made headlines and everyone was talking about it at the beginning of last year, a lot of it was being compared with the Oppenheimer moment, and the fact that it's out of the box kind of thing now, and we have to do something with it, because if we choose not to, well, someone else is going to.
That's it.
You might as well, to a degree. But yeah, it's hugely interesting. There was in fact, this past weekend, an episode just aired, which by the time this is out will be many weeks ago now, but with Farbod, who's the CEO and founder and CEO of a tech company called Phantom Technologies. And they've created, you should definitely give it a listen. I think you'd find it interesting. They created a spatial AI called Cassie, which is being integrated in wearable devices at the moment, primarily for industry. And you mentioned there about the factory sort of example. And some of the stuff he was talking about this thing can do, I mean, essentially, he brought up Jarvis as like one of the main inspirations, which I think we all think about. I'm assuming you know who I'm talking
Jarvis,
about.
yes.
Yeah. I think all of us nerds, that want a Jarvis in our life, right? So that's what he brought up as kind of one of the inspirations for that. And he was talking about the industrial sort of applications of this, especially when it comes to manufacturing and in warehouses and factory, all that sort of things, the sort of safety perspective and so on. And the AI that it built is fantastic. It's truly mind-bending, the capabilities this thing has, in terms of being able to, like you said, quality assurance, but also, even things to do with safety and, having obviously then being integrated with a device that can provide mixed reality feedback as well, in terms of, highlighting certain things in a real space. And then now we've just seen the Apple Vision Pro drop. I mean, it's like, the opportunities there I think for mixed reality or, these sort of devices and AI are really going to be the big companies and the big startups we see now for the next year or two. I think those two things combined are going to be pretty mind-blowing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, bringing together the real world with technology has been a challenge for a long time. To be able to process data in real time on device has been a real huge challenge. But that, well, like you say, it sounds like with this kind of product and stuff that I've seen, research going on, it's certainly becoming doable. These things are doable now. And like you said earlier, that it's going to happen at some stage. Somebody's going to do it. And ultimately, if there's a need from consumers or business users, then it's going to get solved, right? These problems are going to get solved. And so you want to be on the good end as a business owner. You want to be on the good end of this stuff. You don't want to be pushed out of the market because you're too far behind the curve. Like your product maybe is behind, or your productivity is hitting the floor because your competitors are using this stuff.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, AI and in general it's a journey. You take one small step today, another tomorrow, and you keep going. And by the time you get to a year from now, you'll be in a position where AI genuinely is one of your employees. It's probably your most productive employee, helping to be the well-oiled machine, the thing that helps your business run so smoothly. So my key piece of advice for business owners is just not to ignore the thing. Even if you're worried about it, you don't understand it, don't ignore it, because I promise you it's not going to go away. So yeah, you really got to try and get on it, try and understand it, leverage from it what you can. Yeah.
So this consultative service that you're doing at the moment, wait, have you started, or you're about to?
We're about to start it. Yeah, we've just been trying to finalize kind of our approach to it,
Right.
to make sure that we can really add value for people. But yes,
So I suppose, again, by the time this episode airs, you'll probably already be well underway in providing this as a service, as it were. But so is the goal to do this in person? You're going to be trying to, or is it sort of a series of online events, or one-on-one online? Like what's the format?
Well, it will probably start in person. We'll probably do a trial of it with one or two of our existing clients, so that we can learn from the experience as well, so that we can make sure that we're asking good questions. We want people to get value from it. We don't want to show up at someone's business and start from nothing. Sure. We want to be asking the right questions and experience it a little bit for ourselves. I mean, obviously we've got a hell of a lot of experience behind us, so we've got confidence that we're going to be asking the right questions. But that's what the plan is. We're going to trial it with a couple of our clients, and maybe trial it with a charity or something, and do something for those guys for free. And then from that, take what we've learned and refine, and then we're going to go and see people. But yeah, probably in person, because often there's useful data that you can pick up that you can't get from a video call. So walking around their factories, for example, you can't get an exposure to how their business operates without actually going to see it for real. And so yeah, I see it's quite a high value service. We're not just doing a quick video call to have a chat. We're coming to see you. We're going to look at your business and look at the processes that you run, and we're going to give you our advice. We've got a wealth of knowledge and huge expertise and a huge experience in the team. And so it's just a way of giving them that resource. Take from it what you will. I mean, it doesn't mean that it turns into work for us. It could even be that, yeah, you guys, you need to be utilizing this particular AI service, or, using this data warehouse facility. It doesn't necessarily have to turn into work for us. Obviously, that'd be great if it does, but it is genuinely about helping people to solve these problems. And yeah, our focus is local, because we, like I said before, meaningful change. We want to help local business, and we don't want to see local business falling behind because of AI. So yeah, that's where we're at.
I mean, it's interesting. I got this impression when we first spoke as well, that we're very aligned on the way that we see sort of what we do, and I like the fact that you kind of come back to that main mission statement of just like, it's just about informing and empowering people as best as possible, isn't it? And like you said, if it results in work, great, but that's not the main goal of it. The main goal is to just to inform them and to help them wherever possible. That's very admirable. I think we need more people like that in our line of work, to be honest. Did you see random question, but I just remembered something you mentioned earlier. Did you see the interview between Lex Friedman and Mark Zuckerberg that came out a couple of months ago?
I didn't know.
Oh, I highly recommend that.
Okay.
The reason why I bring this up is because you mentioned about people's sort of ownership of their own identities, and like, there's this idea of digital twinning, right? Which is and they basically they performed a whole podcast. It was like 2 hours long, or completely in the metaverse, with their digital twins. That it's some of the new tech from Meta that they're working on, where they can create a digital twin with some scanning and so on, and then and then they just basically sat there in this black void with high resolution versions of themselves moving in real time and having a full-on conversation. And yeah, I highly recommend it, just because you mentioned it earlier, and I think that would be a super interesting, because once you start watching that, your brain really starts going 1,000 miles an hour as to what that means. And then of course the Vision Pro have just released. Have you seen their FaceTime example? Yeah, I mean, that was nuts. And that's just a couple of years after theirs. It's just it's insane. But so I just thought you might find it interesting as a fellow geek and nerd,
Yeah, definitely. I'm always up for anything that's geekery.
I showed my mum she was visiting over the weekend, and I showed her that because we were talking about stuff, and that topic came up, And I showed her just the beginning of that, and she was like watching it like that for the whole time. She couldn't believe it. She was like, well, they're not real. They're not real people. I was like, no, watch. And it kept switching between the camera view of them and real live talking, and then a mesh and so on. And she just couldn't believe it. It just blew her mind.
Yeah.
It's pretty impressive stuff. But I just want to share that. So tell me about some of the stuff that you're working on now. Obviously, you're doing the AI stuff, but I remember when we met for a coffee initially, and we started chatting, you were talking as well about some of the potential software products that you're working on, and in a standalone capacity too. Is that something that you can speak on at all, or is it a bit?
I can a little bit
behind closed doors, or
I can a little bit.
Okay.
So one of our sort of strategic objectives is to build a SaaS platform, essentially.
Right.
Software as a service. So everyone's using some sort of SaaS product these days, whether Slack or some other Microsoft Teams or whatever. So everyone's people are used to SaaS these days, and it's a challenger to the custom software industry because you go to any kind of problem that you're trying to solve. Sometimes you can find a SaaS product that's been designed specifically to solve that problem. Now, the issue, there are issues around that you, as a business, you could end up having 100 different SaaS platforms. And we've seen this. You've been to visit businesses and they've got sort of 20 different SaaS products and none of them talk to each other, obviously.
Yeah.
And so they've got their data in all these 20 different places. They're paying 20 licenses. And so they're racking up sort of $500,000 a year on SaaS products. And my response to them was, well, guys, you realize that you're investing $500,000 a year into something that you don't own, you'll never own, you have no control over. And
all the data is siloed into these individual.
Yeah, exactly. You've got data everywhere. So there's no way you can benefit from your data being everywhere. You need it to be in one place. And so SaaS has its value to say small to medium business, and the custom software can obviously pull it all together. But one of our strategies is to produce some kind of SaaS platform. We've looked at CPD, so for people to work on themselves and build their own knowledge and stuff. And we're not quite there with that product yet. And it might be that it never makes it, but it's one that we embarked on as a learning experience to figure out how would we go about doing this thing. What can we learn from the experience? Not building the software, because that we've done that for years. We're talking about, like you said earlier, building a business ultimately. And so we're trying to really, it's understanding the need. Is there a need? What's the competition like? And all of those kind of more businessy types of questions.
Sure.
And ultimately, what can we produce that's of good value to people to help us as a company have a sustainable income where we can perhaps free up some of our time to spend on other kind of projects. Because ultimately at Switchplane, we're, as software engineers, our time is directly proportional to the sales that we make. We're a labor-based business ultimately. So if we haven't got any work, then we've got no revenues, and so I can't pay people. But obviously, we have enough work, thankfully, that we can pay people. So the idea behind SaaS is to give us a bit, another level of stability. So we're looking at possible options, businesses that we could turn into a SaaS kind of product. And so one of those has been CPD, and we're talking about a few others. But so our strategy is make SaaS one of our highest paying clients ultimately.
It's interesting because there's some crossovers with some of my client base. So I work with a huge range of different kinds of clients across all kinds of industries, but one of them is in game tech more recently in the last sort of 4 or 5 years. And so working with a few different game development studios, indie studios, and and so on. What's interesting is there seems to be a common theme that I've found working with these game dev studios, in that they also release their own games, right? So they're game devs for hire as a studio, but they also very regularly release their own games for much the same reason you described, which is, it keeps people busy, it keeps their creative juices flowing, it sort of encourages people to always stay on the forefront of their given sort of fields and their technologies, and keeping their tools sets sharpened, as it were. But then also from an income perspective, it means they can generate a steady stream of revenue, hopefully, with a steady release of new titles that are fairly low friction and easy to get out the door. And it's a really interesting sort of model, and I think one that many businesses could learn from, for a number of reasons. But so it makes sense. What you're saying makes sense. Absolutely. I think maybe more development agencies or software houses, whatever. What do you prefer to be called? I know everyone likes a different term.
We're a bunch of software engineers, I suppose.
That's the official term. Is that when you introduce yourself in meetings? We're a bunch of software engineers.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, I never really known which term to go. Everyone.
Well, I don't know. I tend to not get too precious about terminology, to be perfectly honest.
Fair enough.
I try to be much more straightforward to people, because that's how I prefer them to be with me, to be honest. I can't cope when people start shouting acronyms at me. I'm much happier just having a chat with someone. Like I said, I'm not traditionally. I'm certainly not a salesperson by any stretch of the imagination. I am. My inner self is just, I'm a geek. I like programming. I don't get to do as much programming as I used to, because obviously I have to actually run a business these days.
Pain in the ass, right?
But my inner self is just
Is this another reason why you're quite interested in spinning up a SaaS product for the business too, because it allows you?
A friendly reminder to share this episode with your network, like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps the show and only takes a couple of minutes.
To have maybe some
get
back to that.
It does because it gives us a bit of freedom, so it's good for the business. It means that we can work on a product ultimately that we enjoy working on, that we want to work on. I've got real interest in renewables. I love energy saving stuff. I like these things are like toys to me. I absolutely love them. If I went to Ohm to go and see a company called Ohm Energy the other day, and they had a whole bunch of stuff sort of just sitting out that you could go and look at. And for me, I was just, I already knew what a lot of this stuff was. We were going on the tour, and I'm like, oh yeah, I know what that is. This is great. I thought, oh yeah, look at that. That's brilliant. I love that inverter. That's brilliant. And then they've got these look,
who doesn't like a good inverter, right?
Yeah, exactly. And they've got these sort of infrared heating things that like really low energy devices for heating and all this kind of stuff, and I love it. And if there's a way that we could get into that industry in some way and build a SaaS platform, that for me would be just be tying up two brilliant parts of my life.
Well, that's an interesting area, because of to go back to what you're saying about AI. I mean, that's an area where there's an enormous amount of data that needs to be processed in order to really measure impacts. And like I remember working a few years back on some with some founders on some products to do with with sort of environmental impact, and the amount of data that needs to be brought in order to especially to create a sort of a UI or an interface that can demonstrate the impact, the environmental impact. Like it's astronomical, and also very, very hard to be certain as to its efficacy, its authenticity, and to verify it accordingly, because there's so many variables. Like you do feel like you need to give it to a supercomputer to kind of figure out all of the variables before actually spitting out a genuine report or something. So
for sure. I mean, that's the kind of thing where you need a lot of data to iron out the peaks and troughs. Because who knows, if you get a tiny snapshot of data and it just so happens it's one of the peaks, then your data is completely off. The more data that you can have to analyze a particular thing, then yes, you're going to minimize those and level it out.
And it's already a big pain in the ass problem with ecotech right now, is it's so easy to manipulate that data in your favor. To be basically taking part in greenwashing, essentially.
Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah, I mean, this is huge issue, obviously, going forward, and And yeah, I mean, I was at Sussex University the other day for their Sussex AI launch. So that they're bringing together different disciplines within the uni. So that they've kind of worked on AI for like 50 years or something.
Right.
It's not new or anything. So this launch wasn't about a new thing that they're doing. It's more about how they're bringing their data scientists together with other scientists and actually putting an umbrella on it so that they can bring them all together to kind of solve real world problems and figure out how they can offer that to the community. And when I was there at the launch, one of the things that they had, one of the students had been working on this thing where they would be recording the sound coming from an environment, and with that data, that sound data, they were able to extrapolate, other information. They were able to say whether the environment was healthy and all this other kind of stuff. And you look at it at the time and you think, well, I'm not 100% sure what the real world application is for some of this stuff, but I understand the need for it. I understand why you're doing this stuff, because you're researching this for the sake of research, and you thought of a problem and you want to understand it, you want to solve it. And whilst yes, it can be hard to see the real world application, of course these things are very, very niche, but when you bring them to a wider sort of problem that needs to be solved, then you start to see the real world application. There were other people there that were looking at sort of weight bearing sensors, so load sensors on robots, and trying to figure out if you need high resolution load sensors, or whether you can use sort of more simple ones and therefore reduce the cost of these things. And there was just so much interesting stuff that these people were working on, and this is kind of thing is just going on all over the world, where all of these universities are working on something, and it's just incredibly interesting. And it's absolutely where the future is going. These people aren't going to stop. People there hugely intelligent, much more intelligent than I am. I'm looking at some of these things and I'm thinking, I don't understand half of this mathematics you've got written down here. It's absolutely bananas, but I'll take your word for it that it's doing something interesting and useful. But yeah, I mean, there were some there where they were scanning imagery, Google Maps imagery, looking at the environment from sort of historical Google Maps imagery, comparing it to today, and looking at how sort of green spaces are being eaten up, looking at hedging and trees, and trying to understand how that impacts on our environment, and scoring stuff and grading it. And so you think, well, I don't know where I'm going with this. There's just so much that is the application of AI and all of this stuff. There's so much that we can start doing because we've got this capability to just scan any kind of data set, whether it's imagery or whatever.
But also, it's just really hopeful and to see that level of innovation occur. I don't know about you, but I get very excited about the future as a result of being aware of and speaking to these kinds of people on a regular basis and being in that environment. And then, I go and speak to friends and family about the future, and they seem very pessimistic about it. I'm like, I can't help but feel like, well, why isn't more of this stuff shared, and talked about? The fact that there are all these people around the world, there's literally hundreds of thousands of people around the world pushing the boundaries of a huge range of subjects, whether that be in science, technology, medicine, whatever. And it's, I find it a huge source of inspiration and motivation to be very optimistic about what lies ahead of us. And I just feel like, why is it so silent? You know what I mean? Are people not interested? Is that why? Or are we not shouting enough about it? And I feel like it's probably a bit of both. But
maybe, but I think often people can be a bit jaded. They've seen it all before. They've been promised X, Y, and Z. But when I was at Sussex, I was talking to the people that were actually carrying out their research. So they're obviously very motivated by it and very excited about what they're doing.
Is part of the problem slightly to do with what you said about yourself, that that people aren't usually who are in these fields aren't very good salespeople, right?
Well, absolutely.
So in some ways they can't actually communicate why something is so exciting or whatever, like, because the problems quite often are so complex that they haven't really got any way of outwardly explaining it beyond sort of, you know, schematics and mathematical equations and things like that. Perhaps that's part of the issue. They need a good PR agency.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I mean, yes, a lot of the presentations that they had at the uni were very interesting, but there were a couple that were, you know, fundamentally the problem that they were trying to solve was really interesting. But the way that they spoke about it, they needed some coaching,
right.
about how that they could deliver their message and explain what it was they're trying to do.
Maybe this is why the general public don't find these sort of domains as interesting as say the launch of the Apple Vision Pro, because it's just, you know, it's not wrapped up in marketing and sales.
It's not wrapped up in marketing. It's not a tangible product, is it?
It's not sexy.
Theory. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Because I remember when I was a kid, do you remember Tomorrow's World?
Yeah, brilliant program.
I used to love that program.
Yeah.
Where is that program now?
Yeah,
exactly. Where are the things like that now? I suppose you have YouTube and stuff, but it feels like that sort of stuff is buried. Like Smarter Every Day. Have you seen that?
Yeah.
You know, stuff like that. But I suppose again, it's gonna. Yeah, I don't know, because it's not mainstream, right?
It's not curated content in the same way that we had it when, looking at Tomorrow's World and seeing that they'd have desktop computers on there or a compact disc. This is what music will come.
Right. The one episode that always sticks in my memory is them talking about Bluetooth.
Right.
And they initially, and I tell people this a lot when talking about how, you know, sometimes you create something and you give it out to the world, and the world kind of takes with it and does something very different with it. I use this as an example a lot, especially with like when people talk about software that they make. You know, you can make it as much as you want to be intended to be used a specific way. At the end of the day, users are going to just do with it what they want. And you know, Bluetooth was, according to Tomorrow's World, and maybe I'm misremembering, it was many years ago, but from what I remember, was meant to be a replacement for the cell, you know, the current day cell network. And essentially to democratize it and to make it free, so that calling would no longer, you know, be charged a chargeable service. But because if you wanted to make a call to, say, someone on the other end of the town, let's just say, it would use Bluetooth to relay the call between each device from here to that person to then connect the call, eliminating the need for a tower, and then therefore making calling free. Now, obviously, we have Wi-Fi, so you could do that through WhatsApp now and so on. But I find it really interesting that was how they were first talking about this Bluetooth technology was, you know, invented, and now it's used to connect your headphones to a device. Like, it's so far removed from its original concept. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And at the same time, obviously, providers of, you know, cell providers have realized, well, we can't really charge for calls anymore because of, I think the general public have cottoned on to the fact it doesn't cost us anything. You know what I mean? And texts, like, you know, how does that cost anything? Like, there's not a person physically carrying the letters, you know, across, you know, so it's like, I think they realized that they were kind of cool. But that was a great show. I missed that show. Someone should bring that back. I wonder who owns the IP for that.
I don't know.
Let's find out and buy it.
There must be must be someone at the BBC that can tell us.
Yeah. We could host it easily. We do it tomorrow. It's not a problem. But yeah, man. What was that? The other thing I wanted to ask you about as well is yes. So going back to this thing about the software. So you kind of alluded. Can you talk much more about what it is, this idea that you're trying to validate right now? Or
I can do, yeah. I can.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, it's called Julia. It's Julia for CPD. So it's a live product at the moment.
Oh, right. Okay.
Live in that it exists online, and in theory people can sign up for it. We're still tweaking things and tweaking the product, because there's competitors and their products are changing, and so we're just trying to understand what the difference is between us and and do a gap analysis essentially on what we're offering, what they're offering. And like I said, it was mostly an experiment into how we could go about doing this as Switchplane. And so it is something that we're interested in. CPD is a really valuable thing, and we encourage everyone at Switchplane to do it. Everyone at Switchplane has sort of a day every couple of weeks or once a month to spend doing their CPD. So we're big believers in getting people to progress, and so it was a natural idea, really. And so my brother's wife, Jen, she works for the NHS. She's as a dietitian. I can't remember what her exact job title is, but she's a dietitian, and they, as an industry, have to do CPD. They have to demonstrate that they've done CPD, and there are plenty of professions where this is the case as well. So we thought, well, maybe we can help people solve this problem. Record their CPD, make it easy, and make it easy for them to report back when they're audited, because you can get audited and you have to demonstrate that you've done this stuff. So that was the original premise behind the idea. People like to do CPD. It's not very easy to track. It's not very easy to sit down in the evening when you've not been given any CPD time at work to think, well, what can I do for my CPD to try and show when I'm audited that I've done something? And so the idea behind the app was that, well, we can help make it easy for a start to record the information, but we're also able to sort of point stuff out to people. So notify people and say that there's this program on BBC Two at this time that's relevant to your profession.
Right.
We reckon that if you just sit down and watch it for half an hour, you can then record that in your CPD and say that you've done this thing. So yeah,
and sorry, and for those listening and watching, CPD, you're referring to continual professional development.
That's
right?
it. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. So learning stuff that helps you become a better employee for your business, or just to get more experience, really, outside maybe the everyday role that you fulfill at work, because it's that experience that becomes invaluable. So you're constantly learning about what's new and all of those things. So yeah, that's where it came from. There's potential that we might pivot it slightly. We don't know if the pricing is right. There's a lot that we still haven't tested from a business point of view. But yeah, it's kind of a proof of concept is there. And yeah, so watch this space. Maybe 3-6 months from now, we might have finalized a few things, or maybe we would have pivoted it completely into something else. But yeah, Switchplane underlying strategy is that we do want to have at least one sort of SaaS product out there.
Are you aiming at any specific industry then?
What, for CPD? Well, the medical industry, so NHS, lots of those guys need to do CPD.
So that is the main one that you're.
Well, it is, but then there are other very similar. Well, I say similar. There are other industries like in financial industries, solicitors. A lot of these industries are driven with audits, so that a lot of them have to prove and become registered. So you have to register as a dietitian, for example. You have to register as an allied health professional or something. And part of that registration, one caveat, is that you have to demonstrate CPD. And there are lots of industries like that. And so there is certainly crossover to different industries. It's not tied solely to AHPs or allied health professionals. There is potential to take it elsewhere, and potential as well to take it to a more sort of business point of view as well. So offering sort of a more almost HR-y type system to businesses where they've got their employees, and yes, the CPD app is a bolt-on for that. So we're helping their employees to do their CPD. We're helping them to track holiday, sickness, and all of those things that all businesses of a certain size need to start doing. So yeah, there's potential for come at it from both ways, really.
Yeah. No, the reason why I ask is because I think this is an area I think a lot of new SaaS platforms struggle with, which is, that there is, and I've been there myself, in fact, with my own SaaS platform, that we're currently in beta now, and hopefully we should be full launching next quarter. And we had the exact same problem. We built this solution that we realized was applicable for so many different industries, and we're like, wow, okay, we can sell this to everyone. And what you quickly realize is, well, first of all, I eventually realized that I should be listening to my own advice that I give to other people and my own clients, which is that the issue with that is the messaging is too broad, right?
Yeah.
You try and make messages. It's almost to what we were talking about right at the beginning when giving a speech to a room. If you try and appeal to everyone, you kind of end up appealing to no one.
Yeah.
And this was the problem we were having. People would be coming to the website or be having meetings with them, and they just wouldn't get it because we were trying to be as broad as possible. And then you would kind of try and backtrack and retrofit it. I was like, oh no, it does fit your use case though. It does. And so what we realized, and again, what I advised to a lot of the sort of founders I work with for when we develop go-to-market strategy, excuse me, is be hyper focused, and then you end up being a subject matter expert or an industry expert, and when people then come to your platform, the landing page, it speaks to them directly. It's like, we are a tool for you, for your business. One great example of that I can think of is a software engineer actually I spoke to fairly recently who wants to start his own agency.
Yep.
And he was struggling. I was like, well, what do you do? What can you do? And he was similar to what we're talking about. It's like, well, I can do everything. I can do this. I can do that. It's like, well, that's too broad. I was like, what interests you the most? And he's like, well, named a few things. I was like, right, well, pick one. And then make your website say that you specialize in that and focus on that. And within months, he'd done more business than he had done, for like 2 or 3 years. Because it's like, there's a certain element of trust there, isn't there?
Yeah.
Of like, okay, this person is saying they're a specialist in this field, and they've got the data to back that up. They've got testimonials from clients to back that up, and et cetera, et cetera. And it all kind of trickles from there, doesn't it? It's just a very common thing, I think, that you see. And it's not to say you can't come to those later on, I suppose, isn't it? But
well, yeah, exactly. I mean, there's no reason why you couldn't spin up another instance of the platform just under a different guise, targeted, like you say, at different industries.
And also people come to you, like with my own startup. So we're focused on delivering our platform to coaches and trainers, right, within the corporate setting. And that was a very conscious decision because it can apply to a whole variety of organizations. There's an HR element to it too. There's lots of different things. But then, of course, as we're sort of putting the call out for these early access sort of beta testers, as it were, of our platform for training and coaching businesses and professionals, every now and then we'll get other people sort of coming in sort of from other angles saying, would this work for me? And we're like, I don't know, let's talk about it. And, actually, once we talk, we say, well, there's no reason why we couldn't. We'll make an exception then if you want to give it a go. So it's like we're not saying that it will work for you from on our website and so on, but actually after some exploration, why not?
Yeah.
So that kind of works too, I suppose. Yeah, super interesting. Well, I mean, look, I think it's going to be really interesting to see how that develops. So it's live now. So are you in kind of a beta or sort of stage? I suppose. Technically speaking, like
it is. I mean, it is available to sign up for, download and install. It's juliacanhelp.com.
Right. I was just looking at it actually.
It's been through various iterations of sort of development. And I don't actually know what the current live iteration is right now. It's probably different to the one that we've got in dev. But there's a companion app that goes alongside it, and stuff. So give it a few months and we'll see where that's at.
Well, I'll be following that along. Interesting. And look, if ever you want to ask any commercial questions, then let me know.
Okay.
That's super interesting. I'll try and remember. Well, I'll mention it now, and then that way, when I'm looking this back and editing it, I'll add a link to the description of this episode too. So if people are curious, they can check it out. Yeah. And is that the main sort of project you're working on, or are you looking at any other projects as well that you want to spend?
Well, internal projects. I mean, we've got our client projects that are our bread and butter. I mean, they're not really ones that I can talk about right now, because they're
no exclusive scoops.
Well, I mean, there is an interesting one that we're working on right now, actually. That's it's called STEM Futures, and there's another one actually, Heart and Hoodies. So like two very different businesses.
Okay.
STEM Futures is a bunch of teachers essentially doing remote learning, and this kind of thing has been done previously, but not necessarily done particularly well. It's Google Classroom and stuff, but it's what they're trying to focus on is building a simple online learning experience. I mean, I'm not involved in the project, so I mean, I don't have all the details, but I mean, there's certainly one to watch. Is so STEM Futures. That's going to be an interesting one. Hopefully for sort of delivery end of March-ish, I guess. And then this project called Heartland Hoodies is completely different. It's the customization of hoodies, like so school leavers mostly. So you may have seen kids when they've left school, they leave school and they've got a hoodie and it's got all the names of their mates on the back, design and all the rest of it. And so Heartland Hoodies, an Eastbourne-based company, they do all that stuff for you. So that they work with the schools and put the designs together and all that kind of stuff. She's insanely busy. Her business has grown massively over the last couple of years, and she needs software to help her with it. So we're building a system that ultimately allows people to design their hoodie, and then allow customers or parents of the school children to then go on and buy it and customize it how they want. It's a very, very different product to what we're talking about with the STEM Futures or with the Julia CPD or the British Airport Transfers guys. These are hugely different, or Littlewood Fencing. So there's so many different types of company that we can apply software to help them solve their problems, which is again, what you're talking about messaging. It's incredibly difficult for us to explain, well, actually, we can do anything that you like. And we do have to step back from that. And we do have to sort of talk about a particular industry that we can work with. So that's why we're kind of focusing on AI, because everyone knows what AI is, that they understand that it's a thing. And stepping back to talk to manufacturers as well, because those guys could really benefit from what we do. There's huge opportunity for those guys to get really decent help from the software that we produce. So we're trying to be more focused rather than sort of blanket messaging.
But it just makes these conversations a lot easier, doesn't it, when you're speaking with potential clients, and for potential clients to make sure they find the right agency to work with, right? I like do you know Matt Johns of Founder Unplugged?
I don't know.
I had him on recently as well. So again, another episode I recommend checking out. Shamelessly plugging this show, but to you. But he's a really interesting guy, and I love his messaging, because if his messaging for their company is something along the lines of digitizing boring businesses, essentially. So taking brick and mortar businesses who aren't traditionally digital and digitizing them and sort of bringing them to the modern era. And that's they're a venture studio kind of concept. So they have a fund that they raise with from external partners, and they choose the projects to work with on that basis that sort of meet that criteria. And they not only build the software, but they also fund that and fund the startup too. But he originally came from the angle of just providing the software service element of it, and it's kind of evolved over time. A really interesting guy. I'll definitely follow him on LinkedIn too if you're not. Okay. And anyone else that's listening that would be interested in that. But I mean, it's going to that. But it took him a very long time to get to that point, of that messaging as well. And from what he was saying in our episode together, it took there was lots of iterations of that, as you do over time. Sort of trying to chase the right thing, I guess, and figure out what works and what doesn't until you kind of eventually land on it. And even now, it's continuously evolving, right? So it's always going to change somewhat. But there is something I think there's also something quite intrinsically what's the word I'm looking for, like intrinsically satisfying from an altruistic level almost in helping individuals with brick and mortar businesses and digitizing them, because that there's a limit to what they can accomplish. And like you're saying about this lady who's built this hoodie business, like she's absolutely heavingly busy. That's the perfect opportunity to digitize and look at a software solution, because you're going to be at capacity. There's only so much you can do as with a physical entity, but as soon as you add technology into it, then you can go international, you can go global, you can scale. Exactly. So there's something really intrinsically fascinating about that application of technology, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, some of the sort of, like you described, bricks and mortar type businesses that we've worked with in the past are really some of the most interesting, and the ones where you can deliver the most value most quickly. I mean, I mentioned Littlewood Fencing. Those guys, when we first had conversations with them, they were very uncertain about the process that we follow, because that whole industry the whole construction kind of industry is very, very difficult to get into. They actively refuse digitization, and so it takes people within the organization to change it from within. There's no amount of external pressure is going to make it happen, unless, of course, it forces the company to close, because they haven't been agile with the times. But Littlewood Fencing, so those guys, when we first spoke to them, they had, I think it was the particular issue was around just simple stuff like invoicing. They had an incredible number of invoices that they had to process, and so the very first thing that we built for them was a way for their customers or suppliers to email them, and that email address would be monitored automatically, and the system would scan attachments, OCR them, figuring out who the supplier is, what the amount is, and putting all of that information into a queue for someone to process, instead of being an email inbox that someone can sit there and actively monitor. And so, it kind of structured that whole process for them, and it was transformational on that part of their business. And so all they did was that they looked at what we had done, looked at the time saving, and just reinvested that time, and continuously have done so. So we're at the point where we've built timesheeting systems, we've built HR systems, we've built materials and jobs, and it's incredible how that system has grown and transformed their business as a result. And it was I remember it distinctively at the time being a thing where they were not sure. We're not really sure if we like this idea, because we don't really know what we're going to get.
Right.
And this is the issue, is like, trying to explain to people, well, nobody really knows where this is going to lead. But you kind of just almost have to take a punt on it and okay, we'll give it a go and see what happens. And it turns out, wow, that was transformational. We should have done this ages ago. Are
there not opportunities then with some of the clients that you and the solutions you built for clients to spin those out into their own SaaS solutions in partnership maybe with the clients?
Yeah, possibly. I mean, that is something we've spoken about. The issue is that these people are very busy with their day to day, and they're not necessarily business focused people. They're, a lot of the time we are dealing with owner managers, and those people don't necessarily want to spin off the software that they've invested in to help their competitors. But there are certainly aspects of the systems that we build that have correlations between them. So there are plenty of similarities between the systems that we built for Littlewood, for example, the systems that we built for Moody Sewage. These guys, these companies, they all have similar kinds of problems, where they have, job management, mobile workforce, all of these kind of things. And there's definitely scope there. And like I say, it's something that we've got an appetite for and hope to look for. What we've got to weigh up is what does an MVP look like? So what can we get produced for people to use that's going to be good enough value for them, but low enough risk for us that we're not investing sort of 3 years of development into a thing that no one's going to use. We want to have a product, a tangible product that isn't going to take us forever to develop, so that we can at least prove the concept.
And ideally with a very clear USP and sort of value propositions, so that you're not again spending a huge amount of time in sales, trying to flog a dead horse, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. So we've got appetite for it, and that it's certainly something that we want to be doing. And so it's a really exciting position to be in as a business owner. Is that we like coming up with new ideas and like doing new things, and it's exciting. So for us, it's more about, well, we need the idea. What's the thing that's missing? What's the SaaS product that's missing right now? That's where we're at. And the CPD thing may well turn into something, or we might turn it into something slightly different. But
and it wouldn't be the first time that a product's been built one way and ends up being
exactly.
Way. So I mean, these things evolve over time.
Exactly. We're not. We try where possible to be driven by data. We don't try to get too precious over stuff. If stuff goes wrong, we try things, and if it doesn't work, then it doesn't work. And obviously, we try our best to make it work, and we'll pivot it if we can.
But you can't fit a square peg into a round hole.
Well, exactly. We're not precious over it. But we'll. But as a general theme, SaaS is certainly something that we really want to be working towards, and having one or two of these sort of SaaS platforms would be great. Yeah.
Well, I'd love to grab a coffee with you one day again and talk and commercialization and things like that, strategies. It's always fun to talk about, and that's the area that I get all nerdy about too. So. But listen, we've come to the end already, which is crazy. That's flown by, and I had a ton more stuff I wanted to ask you about, but all the more reason to catch up again.
Sure.
If you could submit me for another episode in the near future, perhaps.
Why not?
But before I let you go, I mean, just quickly for those listening and watching, I mean, obviously I'll put your website for Julia in there and Switchplane, but where else can people maybe find you, connect with you, follow you, the business, etc.? Where do you want to guide people towards?
Well, they can find me on LinkedIn. I'll be wearing a hat in my picture. I like a hat. I am a hat man.
Normally I am too. We're both not wearing hats today.
No, I've tried to stop wearing my hat indoors. Well, actually, as it's got to winter, it's a bit weird wearing a bobble hat inside. Right. So I'm normally wearing a cap, and I'm known for wearing a cap. So I might even be weirding a few people out right now by not wearing a cap.
Same.
But,
I'll include your LinkedIn profile link.
LinkedIn. So if anyone wants to connect with me, and like I said, we're about helping people to solve problems. So even if you're not sure that we're the right kind of people, it doesn't matter. I'm happy to have a chat with you anyway, and see if there's anything that software either we can help to do to help you solve a problem, or maybe there's something that we can recommend. And so that's. And
like you said, you're also going to be, by the time this airs, talking about offering the people from an AI application for business too. So presumably people can contact you about that as well.
So if anyone's got any questions about AI, in particular about how they can apply it to their business, or how they can get their staff actively engaged with AI and how they can make that happen, or if they've got complex processes in their business, and all of those kinds of lovely kind of juicy problems that we like to look at, then I'm sure we can help. So welcome to connect and have a chat.
Sounds good. So all those links will be down there. Thank you again, and I look forward to catching up soon. Have a great rest of the week, and I hope you continue to feel more healthy as well.
Thank you.
All right, dude. Take care. We'll see you soon.
Cheers. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening and/or watching. Please like and subscribe and join in the conversation in the comments below.